This series of videos is about the Voicitys project, which is funded by the European Union. Voicitys is about the diversity of people who live and work in 4 different cities across Europe, in the UK, Hungary, Italy and Germany, and it uses community reporting and social science research methods. In the UK, the area that we've chosen to study is the Charlestown and Lower Kersal area of Salford, also known as Chalk. Life expectancy in the area is lower than average for England, and it has a high rate of residents with no qualifications. It's quite a deprived area, and about 25% of the population identify as black and minority ethnic. So our project team went out and we interviewed key stakeholders in the area, and we asked them questions about 4 different areas: their perceptions of diversity, the places of diversity in their area, if they felt they had an impact in decision making in the area, and how policies at a local and national level affected residents of the area. And the first thing that was really notable about this section was how many different ways the idea of diversity was interpreted by the interviewees. So the most common characteristics referred to were age, socioeconomic status and ethnicity. Several interviewees made reference to the fact that the area was used to be predominantly white and still is, but is now much more ethnically and racially diverse than it used to be. And this was generally celebrated by the interviewees, who spoke of Chalk being a kind of vast mix of people from all over the world, an eclectic mix of ethnic communities. Interviewees often acknowledges the kind of socio-economic challenges of Chalk's residents, but also talked about their pride and resourcefulness. Age was actually mentioned by every interviewee, which was really interesting. And younger and older people were often highlighted as seen as particularly vulnerable groups. The most mentioned site for the Chalk area by far was Salford Sports Village. This is a legacy project from the New Deal for Communities Regeneration Scheme, and it houses a multi-million-pound leisure centre, acts as a community hub, and includes like a library, a cafe and a nursery. And stakeholders at all levels mentioned the sports village. A few of the other spaces mentioned included the Broughton Hub, local pubs, St Sebastian's Community Centre and the local churches. And interestingly, the river and the wetlands that run right through the centre of Chalk were also mentioned by many interviewees as being really important to the area. Most interviewees felt that community engagement within their own particular groups was strong, and they could give really specific examples of times when they had listened to and acted upon feedback and ideas from their users. When they were asked to think about decision making and the community voice in decision making, respondents typically discussed 2 different spaces where these issues come up. The local community forums, which are run by a prominent local charity, and the official kind of council-run community committee. And it was in this section that we identified, I suppose, kind of a perception gap, if you like, between those higher up the decision-making chain, who tended to see the community committee as a really useful forum where they heard really strong voices of residents, and those kind of smaller grassroots organisations who actually felt that the community committees weren't that effective. So the first thing that we did was ask organisations whether they themselves had a formal written diversity policy, and all of the larger organisations said yes they did. Only the smaller grassroots organisations tended to say that they didn't because of their size or their informal nature. What was really interesting there was how many interviewees talked about how you can have the policies, but they really need to be accompanied by good training and support for staff so that they can understand and implement the policies. The second part of this area, if you like, was respondents being asked to think about local and national policies that they felt had had an effect on the diversity of Chalk. So the most commonly referenced ones were changes to housing policy, so things like the increase in buy-to-let properties, the selling off of social housing, and the amount of new builds in the area. So we felt that the interviewees in our study celebrated Chalk's diversity and thought that the area had become more diverse in recent years. They did say that this does bring its own set of challenges to the area, perhaps in terms of communication, engagement, resources and environmental pressures, and a lot of them are really worried about the level of deprivation in Chalk. A perception gap was identifiable in issues of community voice, with interviewees like the local councillors celebrating the strength of local voices, and other people with less power and authority saying that they really didn't feel that they had a say in decision making. But other local issues also included funding cuts and the resultant kind of cuts to services that came from that. And on a national level, cuts, especially cuts to benefits, were of real concern to many interviewees.